We're going to talk about a really awful subject called divorce. Lately, I've had a lot of clients divorcing, unfortunately. So I guess with everything COVID related, people were cooped up in their homes. I guess they realized who they were cooped up with and decided it wasn't working for them, unfortunately. So it's not a pretty thing. I did read an interesting statistic that in Canada, 38% of all marriages end in divorce. So I don't know if we're just becoming amazingly picky or if we just don't have this marriage thing down pat. Let's talk about some of the information that you could use if you cannot rekindle the magic and you have absolutely decided that you're going to divorce. It's obviously a very emotional and devastating experience. So let's talk about some of the laws. Now they differentiate a little bit throughout the provinces, but I'm going to talk about Canadian laws. I'm not really sure about US laws. And I'm not 100% sure of the Canadian ones either. So you definitely want to consult a divorce lawyer. However, from my investigation, under the Canada's Constitution, marriage is an equal partnership. It is an equal contribution. So if you're living in your marital home, just so you know, it doesn't matter if you're working, if you're the contributor, if you stayed home raising the kids. Under Canada's Constitution, you're an equal playing partner. And it does not matter. I know that I've had the question come up, well, I paid all the bills. It doesn't matter. The law says it's equal. Now, a couple interesting things is that if you actually were married, even if you owned the home before your spouse moved in with you, it is considered the marital home and it is split equally. Unfair, maybe, I know, but that is the law. If it's common law, it's totally different. So a common law marriage is 3 years, unless of course you've had a child together, and and then of course that speeds up the process. But in common law, it's a little bit different. If you owned the home previous, then you're going to be splitting the equity increase in that home. Here's a question that a lot of people ask me: do I have to stay living in the home in order to still qualify to gain on the sale or the refinance or whatever's going to end up happening? We'll talk about that in a minute. No, you don't, especially if you're in an abusive situation. Get out of the house. It does not serve you to stay in the situation just because you're hanging on and thinking that you have to be there in order to qualify. The law states that whether you're continuing to pay the mortgage or you're continuing to live there, you're still entitled from the day that you decide to separate. Okay, so let's talk about whether or not you're going to sell it versus one of you buying the other out. So this seems to be the common thing. Now, if you're tight for money and this house is your only asset, the truth is that you probably should sell it. I know that it's disheartening, but I have seen so many people go through, jumping through hoops to make it work that they buy out the other person. Some of that is pride. I get it that you don't want to leave the home that you've put your heart and soul into, or, at some point, maybe a lot of sweat equity into making it, where you lived for however long that was. But if you can't afford it, don't do it. You're just going to have to face the fact that you're going to sell it, or maybe rent it out until the market gets better. But the more amicably you can do this with your ex, the better, because the only one that wins in this department is the lawyers. And the truth is that everybody gets a lawyer thinking that the lawyer is going to be able to change the law, but the law is the law. So the longer you fight against the laws, the more money you pay the lawyers. Let's talk about taking over the mortgage. So if for some reason you have some extra money and you do want to buy out one or the other, I guess you have to determine which person is going to be remaining in the house or who has the ability to buy it out. At that point in time, you're going to get what's called an appraisal. Now, I get this question all the time. What's the difference between an appraisal and a market evaluation? So I'm a real estate agent and I do market evaluations. I do not do appraisals. If I had my appraisal license, I could do appraisals, but I don't. However, the interesting fact is that realtors and appraisers actually derive the information from the same exact place. The difference is that an appraiser's job is essentially to make sure that the lending institution or the bank isn't over lending on the property, that the property is worth more than the mortgage amount. The realtor's evaluation is basically to give you the number that it will sell for in the current market conditions. So very, very different. A market evaluation is what I do. An appraiser is what an appraisal does. It's generally more conservative, but you will require one if you are refinancing. If you're putting your house on the market, you'll have to decide amongst the two of you which realtor you're going to use. Generally, the one person has a realtor in mind and the other one has a realtor in their mind. It is possible, in answer to your question, to choose two realtors. They can work. It's called a co-listing. You can do it. That way, each of you have your own independent representation and advice if you're at the point where you cannot agree. So those are kind of the similar questions that I've been getting lately. I'm very, very sorry for all of you that are going through this, because it's, even though we're talking about the asset and the financial aspect of it, there's a much, much bigger part that needs to be looked at, and that is the emotional turmoil and the fact that you are going to be living on half of what you were before, because generally the equity is cut in half, and buying something with half the equity is not always easy unless you go to another location. So hopefully you found this information valuable, especially the part about what the difference is between a market evaluation and an appraisal. And don't get divorced because it costs you a lot of money and a lot of heartache.